The crisis in Ukraine is drawing comparisons and many contrasts as well to the war between Russia and Georgia in 2008. But are there any lessons we can draw from a look back at that particular crisis? Let's talk to someone who was there and who would know. Batu Kutelia is a former deputy defense minister of Georgia and a former ambassador to the United States, I should say. He joins me now from our Washington studio. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining us. So you were in Georgia in 2008. You were in the government when the war with Russia happened, those very bloody 5 days in Georgia. When you see what's happening right now in Ukraine, do you see a similar situation?
Yes, clearly there are a lot of parallels, but if we put these two events in a broader context, there are a long tail of events that preceded the war in Georgia and the Ukrainian crisis as well, an invasion in Ukraine. And these are the different methods of the pressure that Russia and Putin's regime resorted on exercising on these sovereign countries, on its neighbor, like using economic embargo, using energy embargo, and eventually then resorting to the military force.
So what do you think will happen in Ukraine, and how would it be different from what happened in Georgia in 2008? Do you think that Russia will consolidate its control or its grip on Crimea, that it will be a fait accompli eventually?
First of all, I think international community should not allow Putin to assume some kind of status quo and claiming some part of the Ukrainian territory, so revising the borders. What happened in Georgia after 2008 war, notwithstanding that Russia still occupies two major parts of my country, is that Georgia continued as a state. Georgia continued and its economy is developing successfully. Georgia didn't change its foreign policy orientation, still plans to become a NATO member country, and all this was possible because of the extension of economic assistance from the US and European partners, and also political backup of the security and foreign policy choice of Georgian nation, where majority supports Georgia's NATO integration. I think these same two major pillars should be used in case of the Ukraine. First of all, the economic assistance.
And we heard that from Secretary Kerry, I was going to say, in Kiev, saying extending economic assistance to the transitional government there in Kiev.
Yes, economic assistance is important twofold. First of all, actually it's important for the economy and for the Ukrainian people, but secondly, to diffuse so-called the perception that Putin and the Russian regime tries to impose in a post-Soviet space, that democracy or democratic choice means economic chaos. And therefore, they need to have some kind of a strongman who rules really fast. So this economic assistance will have a twofold effect and will be one of the major pillars to help Ukraine to navigate where its people is desiring to head to. And the second important, besides economy, is a security element. And here I think there is NATO option, which cannot be substituted by no other organization.
A NATO option as an integration of Ukraine into NATO?
Yes.
But I mean, let me ask you, this is an interesting point. I don't mean to interrupt, but you have those, even those who support the transitional government in Kiev right now, who say, you know what, integrating countries that are butted up against Russia in the region there would just be, would just contribute to inflaming the situation. You're heightening tension. It's basically a provocation, integrating Ukraine and Georgia into NATO, right at the doorstep of Russia.
I think I have to disagree with this type of judgment, and just the opposite. Georgian and Ukrainian integration into NATO will diffuse the tensions. If NATO had made a decision in 2008 to extend membership action plan to Georgia and Ukraine at that time, then we would avoid war in 2008 and the current crisis in Ukraine as well. So I think right now the NATO and the democratic free world should not repeat the same mistake and to accelerate process of inclusion of Georgia and NATO, Georgia and Ukraine in NATO. And I think that the events of the NATO enlargement and waves of NATO enlargement in so-called the post-Soviet or post-communist space, largely prevented the same type of crisis either in Eastern Europe, Poland or Czech Republic or Baltic states. So I think that is the only solution in terms of providing long-lasting and irreversible security for Ukraine as well as for Georgia.
Batu Kutelia, the former Deputy Defense Minister for Georgia, joining us from Washington. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
We'll be right back.